All right, folks, get ready to dive deep. Today, we're zeroing in on a philosopher who tackled some of the, well, the biggest questions out there.
Oh, yeah, we're talking heavy hitters today.
You got it. We're talking Jacques Maritain. Now, I know you're a philosopher, so Aquinas, that's familiar territory, right?
Absolutely. The OG, you could say.
Well, Maritain, he was a giant in Thomism, but here's the catch, 20th century giant. He wanted to, renovate Thomism for the modern world.
Ambitious guy.
Totally. So the question is, did he pull it off? Was he actually a true Thomist? Or did he end up kind of going his own way? This is going to be a wild ride because we're hitting metaphysics, epistemology, even politics and aesthetics.
Buckle up, right.
You got it. Now, what strikes me is Maritain's path to Thomism, it wasn't a straight line.
No, not at all.
It's like he's trying on different philosophical hats. First, he's drawn to Spinoza.
Spinoza, yeah, big name.
Then he flips, and it's Bergson.
Oh, Bergson, interesting choice.
But he ends up ditching both. I mean, what makes someone do a 180 like that?
Yeah, you gotta wonder what's going on in his head.
Right, he was putting these frameworks through the ringer, and none of them quite fit. And then, boom, existential crisis hits. And not just him, his wife, too.
Oh, wow. Talk about a life shakeup.
Seriously. And what happens? They convert to Catholicism.
It's not just changing your brand of coffee.
No kidding. This is life-altering stuff. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just a feeling,
Right, not just a whim.
It was tied up with all these intellectual knots he was trying to untangle.
Yeah, he wasn't satisfied with the easy answers.
Exactly. So he finds Thomism. And I was like, okay, maybe this is it.
A potential fit.
But then he doesn't just accept it, right? He's like, hold on, got to spruce this up, got to renovate.
Thomism 2.0, I like it.
Right. And of all things, he digs into metaphysics.
Interesting in the 20th century, no less.
I know. When everyone else was obsessed with, epistemology.
Makes you wonder what he saw that everyone else missed.
Totally. It's like he's saying, hey, language and logic, that's all fine and dandy, but
there's a bigger picture.
yeah, we're missing the forest for the trees. You got to understand being itself, and that's metaphysics.
That's the foundation.
Exactly. So he's not just copying Aquinas, he's building on him, right? Trying to fix what he sees as messed up in modern philosophy.
And I'm not afraid to take on the big names.
No way. So how much did he actually change Thomism? What were his big idea?
Well, one of the most interesting ones is this thing called existential intellectualism.
Wow. Okay, that's a mouthful.
Right, and it's his own unique spin on Thomism.
Okay, got to unpack this. Existential intellectualism. What does it even mean?
Well, imagine this. For Maritain, metaphysics, it doesn't start with some stuffy concept. It starts with our own existence, right here, right now.
Whoa, that's a bit different.
Right. It's about getting that immediate experience of existing. He calls it the eidetic intuition of being. And this is what everything else is built on.
So I'm thinking Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
Sort of.
But Maritain goes way deeper, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just my existence. It's about the act of existing itself, which leads us to, well, God.
Okay, we're getting into some serious territory here.
And this is where I think it get really interesting, because this eidetic intuition thing, it becomes his, get this, sixth way to prove God's existence.
Wait, sixth way? Hold on, Aquinas only had 5, didn't he?
It's right, 5 classic ways. So is Maritain going rogue here, or is he, riffing on Aquinas?
That's a good question. It's almost like he's blending different thinkers, right?
Yeah, it gets you thinking about influence and originality,
Totally. It's like he's taking bits from here and there, but ultimately his base is still Thomism.
Finding those connections.
Right. Building bridges between all these philosophical worlds, always trying to get that bigger picture.
It's a fascinating journey, and that's where his epistemology, really shines. Maritain gets into all the different kinds of knowledge, how they each kind of fit with what we're trying to know.
Okay, hold on. Different kinds. Now, that's a pretty big claim. As a philosopher, I'm kind of used to, the justified true belief thing, right?
Right, the classic definition.
So how does Maritain's view work with that? Is he, chucking the whole thing out?
He doesn't necessarily say get rid of it. It's more like that classic model. It mostly works for what he calls paranoetic knowledge, the stuff we get from science,
Observation, measurements, that kind of thing?
Exactly, empirical stuff. But Maritain says that's only one level. He's got this whole hierarchy with higher levels that go beyond our senses.
Okay, color me intrigued. What are these other levels he's talking about? And how do we even get to them? It's not like we could just, observe them, right?
Right. So above science, he puts diaretic knowledge. That's what we get through philosophy.
Philosophy, okay. So deeper thinking.
Yeah, getting to the essence of things, their forms. And then there's an even higher level, analytic knowledge. That's knowledge by analogy. It's how we approach the big mystery God.
Whoa, okay, so it's like a ladder of knowing. Each step takes you higher. But are they like totally separate, or do these levels connect somehow?
He sees them as connected, they build on each other. Science needs philosophy, and even philosophy, it goes back to that eidetic intuition of being we talked about.
Right, right. Everything's tied together. But then there's that whole connatural knowledge thing. That one really throws me off. How can we call it knowledge if it's not like reason or census?
It's definitely a challenge to the traditional ideas of what counts as knowledge.
It almost sounds like intuition or instinct.
In a way, yeah. Maritain says it's non-conceptual, non-rational. It's in your, like, pre-conscious intellect.
Preconscious, huh? Okay, so how do you explain that?
It's like an intuitive grasp. It comes through, like, inclination, a kind of sympathy, even affinity.
So more than just a gut feeling, but not something you can really like prove.
Right, and that's where some philosophers get a little hesitant. Can we really call this knowledge?
It does seem pretty subjective.
It does, but Maritain says, yeah, it's less clear than, say, rational knowledge, but it's still valid. He thinks it's especially important for things like morality and art.
Morality and art. So areas where just logic doesn't cut it.
Exactly. It's like reason can only take you so far.
It seems like he's always trying to bridge those gaps. Reason and faith, objective and subjective. It's all in his epistemology.
Yeah, he's not afraid to embrace the complexity.
Absolutely. And that bridge building, we see it in his philosophy of nature too, right?
Oh, definitely. That's where he connects science and metaphysics.
So is he saying science is limited?
He'd say it's inherently limited.
In what way?
Well, science is great at the observable stuff, right? But it can't really grasp the essences of things or the ultimate causes.
Ah, I see. Science tells you what, philosophy tells you why.
Perfect. Maritain would love that. For him, the philosophy of nature gets into those foundational concepts, movement, substance, life.
The stuff science just assumes.
Exactly, but it can't explain them from within its own system.
So he's saying science needs philosophy to make sense of its discoveries.
To connect them to a deeper understanding of reality, yeah. And this brings us back to those big questions.
Natural theology, philosophy, religion, that kind of thing.
Right. He was a devout Catholic, so those questions, they were really central for him.
I'm always curious about this. How does someone reconcile reason and faith? They seem so, I don't know, separate.
Well, he argues that faith, it builds on reason but goes beyond it. It's not irrational, but it's not just logic either.
It's like a leap.
Yeah, a leap of trust, but that leap, it has to be grounded in reason.
So it all ties back to his idea of different kinds of knowledge, right? He's not just keeping reason and faith in separate boxes.
Exactly. He wants to show how they work together, even if they're on different levels. And this is key to understanding his moral and political philosophy, too.
Okay, so how does that work? He was a big natural law guy, right?
Oh, yeah. He believed in objective moral principles and that they're grounded in human nature itself.
So how did he take that into the real world, into politics? Was he like a clear-cut liberal or conservative?
It's tricky because he doesn't quite fit those boxes. He came up with this idea of integral humanism.
Integral humanism. Okay. What's that all about?
So it's recognizing that everyone has inherent dignity, but it also stresses the common good, like finding that balance between, I guess, individualism and collectivism.
Not just every man for himself, but not losing the individual in the crowd either.
You got it. He saw problems with both extremes. Too much individualism and everyone's isolated, alienated. Too much collectivism and you crush freedom, creativity. Integral humanism was his way to, like, chart a path where everyone's respected within a community.
So where does that put him politically?
He was all for democracy, but not just any democracy. It had to be based on this deeper commission to human dignity and going for the common good. Not enough to just have majority rule.
Right. The whole system has to be about helping people flourish.
Exactly. High standards, right?
No kidding. But it didn't stop there, did he?
Nope, he was a huge advocate for human rights.
Human rights, okay.
Saw them as coming from natural law. And get this, his ideas actually influenced the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Whoa, seriously. His philosophy actually made a difference in the real world.
Big time. Shows how his ideas weren't just ivory tower stuff. He cared about making the world better, more just.
Absolutely. And that focus on human dignity, on the common good, it even pops up in his aesthetics, which, you don't always expect.
Right. You think of beauty, it seems so personal, right?
Yeah, totally subjective, just taste. So how did Maritain see it?
He had a pretty subtle view. He'd say, yeah, we perceive beauty with our senses, but ultimately it delights the understanding. It's not just a feeling.
So it's more than I like it. There's something in the thing itself that makes it beautiful.
Exactly. He thought beauty was rooted in the nature of things, integrity, proportion, splendor.
Okay, so there is an objective side to it.
But it's also about your subjective response. It's where the object and the person meet. in this, like, harmonious way that can elevate our understanding.
Wow, that's a really cool way to think about it. Makes me think back to his different kinds of knowledge. It's like art can give you knowledge, too.
He was getting, yeah, he talked about poetic knowledge, a way of knowing through, like, creative intuition.
So art wasn't just pretty things. It was a way to get to truth, to see reality more deeply.
Exactly. He saw it as this powerful force for change, you know. Personally, culturally, art can shake up your assumptions, broaden your horizons, connect you to something bigger.
It's amazing how much we've covered today. Metaphysics, epistemology, politics, even art. He was thinking about it all. What really strikes you as his most important contribution?
That's tough, but I'd say bringing back natural law and giving human rights a solid philosophical grounding, especially in his time. You had fascism, communism, denying basic human dignity,
Maritain offered a different vision.
totally one based on reason, dignity, the common good. And he didn't just preach to the converted, he actually talked to people who disagreed with him.
Yeah, looking for that common ground. And it's not just talk. Look at his work with UNESCO, his impact on the UN Declaration.
Real world stuff.
Absolute. Okay, but let's get back to that original question. Was Maritain really a Thomist, or did he stray too far from Aquinas?
Ah, the big debate.
Right. Some Thomists, they say all that intuition stuff, especially the eidetic intuition, it goes off the rails, like it's too subjective.
Undermines the whole Thomistic system.
And then connatural knowledge. That's a pretty big step away from classic Thomism.
It definitely pushes the boundaries, but you gotta remember, Maritain was grappling with all the messy stuff of human experience.
He wasn't just copying Aquinas.
No way. He took on those challenges of modern thought. He wanted to make Thomism speak to people then.
So maybe it's not straying, but evolving, like he's growing the tradition, keeping it alive.
That's it. He was building on Aquinas, but he knew philosophy can't just stay frozen in time.
Make you wonder, what would Maritain say about our world? All the tech, the political divisions, the climate crisis.
Right. What would he make of it all?
Do you think his ideas could help us navigate all this?
I think so. That emphasis on dignity, the common good, talking to each other, that's all super relevant. And his idea of knowledge, that it's all connected science, philosophy, art, faith, that's something we need to hear today.
We're so specialized, so fragmented.
Exactly. He was ahead of his time, in a way. He knew we need a bigger picture to bring things together.
And that integral humanism, it could help us think about social justice, how we share resources.
In a world that's getting more and more connected.
Yeah, huge questions. How do we meet everyone's needs while respecting their freedom and dignity?
Maritain's work makes you wrestle with those questions.
So he might not have had all the answers, but he definitely knew what we ask.
Exactly. He was dedicated to truth, but he also knew reason has limits.
Humble, in a way.
Yeah. He gave us a lot to think about, and his work, it still challenges us, inspires us.
Well, there you have it. Jacques Maritain, a thinker who wasn't afraid to go deep, to question everything.
From the nature of being, to knowledge, to politics, to art.
And even if he didn't always agree with Aquinas, he definitely made Thomism his own. He was a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. And as you go on your philosophical journey, I'd say go back to Maritain, see what you discover.
His ideas might surprise you. They're still relevant, even today.
You never know. Maybe you'll be the one to carry the torch, to keep that renovation going.
That's a great thought. Until next time, keep those philosophical wheels turning.